My name is Audrey, and I'm 37 years old. For the better part of 2 decades, my life revolved around one central, shining star: Christmas. Not just Christmas Day, mind you, but the entire season. From the moment the first crisp autumn leaf fell, my mind would begin to hum with visions of twinkling lights, the scent of pine and gingerbread, and the joyful chaos of my home filled with family. This wasn't just a holiday, it was a deeply ingrained tradition, a legacy passed down from my grandmother, then my mother, and finally proudly to me. Every year, without fail, Christmas happened at my house. It was an unspoken rule, a comforting constant in an ever-changing world. Our home transformed into a festive wonderland, each ornament, each carefully chosen decoration, holding a memory, a laugh, a tear. It was a labor of love, yes, but more than that, it was my identity, my contribution to our family's happiness. My husband, Mark, understood this. He saw the joy it brought me, and he supported my annual descent into what he affectionately called Audrey's Christmas mania. Our children, now teenagers, had grown up with this tradition, their own childhoods inextricably linked to the magic we created within those walls. It was perfect, or so I thought. The crack in that perfect facade appeared not with a bang, but with a casual, almost dismissive statement from my mother-in-law, Carol. "We're hosting Christmas this year." Just like that. 4 simple words that shattered my entire world into a million sparkling, sharp fragments. My breath caught in my throat, a physical ache blooming in my chest. It wasn't just about the location, it was about the years of effort, the love, the very essence of what I believed Christmas to be. My heart felt like a lead weight, dragging me down into a dark, unfamiliar place. Have you ever had something you poured your heart and soul into, something that defined a part of you, ripped away in an instant? If so, you know this feeling. Stick around, because this story isn't just about Christmas decorations. It's about a woman finding her voice, and what happens when the very fabric of tradition unravels. For as long as I could remember, Christmas at our house was a non-negotiable. It wasn't a chore, it was a calling. My grandmother, bless her meticulous soul, started it all. Her tiny house would swell with family, laughter echoing off walls adorned with her handmade ornaments. My mother inherited the mantle, expanding the guest list, adding new traditions like the annual gingerbread house competition. Then it was my turn. When Mark and I bought our first house, a cozy 4-bedroom with a generous living room and a sprawling backyard, I knew instinctively that this was where the Christmas magic would live on. I embraced the responsibility with open arms, a joyous burden I carried with pride. Every year, starting in early November, I'd pull out the bins from the attic. Oh, those bins! Each one meticulously labeled. Ornaments sentimental, lights white, garland greenery. It was a system, a well-oiled machine that had been perfected over 2 decades. Mark would dutifully carry the heavy boxes down, and the kids, even as they grew older and cooler, would still get a twinkle in their eyes when they saw them. Our tree, always a real one, would stand tall and proud in the living room window, visible from the street, a beacon of cheer. The mantelpiece would overflow with stockings, each one embroidered with a family member's name. We'd host Christmas Eve dinner, a chaotic but joyful affair, followed by carols around the piano. Christmas morning was a symphony of rustling wrapping paper, delighted squeals, and the comforting aroma of my special cinnamon rolls baking. My in-laws, Carol and Richard, were always guests of honor. They'd arrive Christmas Eve, sometimes staying in our guest room, sometimes at a nearby hotel if they preferred. They always seemed to enjoy themselves, participating in the festivities, praising my cooking, admiring the decorations. There was never a hint, not a single whisper, that they might desire to host. It was simply understood, Christmas was at Audrey's. It was our thing. It was my thing. So when Carol dropped that bomb, "We're hosting Christmas this year," the world tilted on its axis. My initial reaction was disbelief, then a slow-burning indignation. Had I not done enough? Had my efforts gone unnoticed? The unspoken expectation, the years of dedicated effort, felt suddenly brutally invalidated. The air in the kitchen, usually so warm and inviting, suddenly felt thin, almost suffocating. The innocuous teacup in my hand felt impossibly heavy, a fragile echo of the delicate balance that had just been shattered. My mind raced, trying to process the casual announcement that had rewritten decades of tradition. It wasn't just a change of venue, it was a direct challenge to the unspoken contract, a ripple effect that threatened to capsize the very foundation of my holiday world. I tried to play it cool. I really did. My voice, however, betrayed me, coming out a little too high, a little too strained. Oh, really, Carol? That's unexpected. Carol, oblivious to the emotional earthquake she'd just unleashed, just smiled, a sweet, saccharine smile that felt like nails on a chalkboard. Yes, dear. Richard and I were talking, and we thought it was time for a change. It's so much work for you every year, isn't it? We want to give you a break. A break. A break. My Christmas wasn't work, it was joy. It was passion. It was my artistic expression. But I bit my tongue, forcing a polite, if strained, smile in return. That's very thoughtful of you. I managed, the words tasting like ash. Later that evening, I broached the subject with Mark. He was scrolling through his phone, looking relaxed on the sofa. Honey, I began, trying to keep my voice even, your mom said they're hosting Christmas this year. Mark barely looked up. Oh yeah? That's nice. Change of pace. Change of pace? My blood ran cold. He said it so nonchalantly, as if it were a casual decision about what to have for dinner. Didn't he understand what this meant to me? Didn't he see the years of love, effort, and tradition that were being casually tossed aside? Mark, I said, my voice rising a little, this isn't just a change of pace. This is Christmas. This is our tradition. My mom, her mom, it's always been at our house. He finally looked up, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. Audrey, it's just 1 year. What's the big deal? It'll be nice not to have all the stress. Stress? He truly thought it was stress. That's when the deep hurt set in. It wasn't just Carol's dismissive announcement. It was Mark's utter lack of understanding, his inability to see beyond the surface. It was as if a part of me, a part one cherished and nurtured, was invisible to him. The next few days were a blur of internal turmoil. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it wasn't such a big deal. Maybe it would be nice to have a year off. But every time I thought that, a wave of sadness washed over me. I walked through my house, looking at the empty spaces where the tree would stand, where the stockings would hang. It felt hollow, incomplete. The excitement I usually felt for the holiday season was replaced by a gnawing emptiness. My mind kept replaying Carol's words, Mark's casual dismissal. It wasn't just about hosting, it was about respect, about acknowledgement, about being seen. And I felt completely unseen. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about their desire to host. It was about the unceremonious way they had stripped me of a role I had embraced with such love and dedication. There was no discussion, no, would you mind if, just a declaration. It felt like a demotion, a quiet dismissal from my post as the keeper of Christmas. A heavy silence descended upon our home, palpable and suffocating, thick with unspoken resentment. The usual hum of anticipation that filled the air as the holiday season approached was conspicuously absent, replaced by a dull ache of disappointment. It was a silence that echoed not just through the empty spaces where festive decorations should have been, but through the very core of our relationship, a chasm widening between understanding and neglect. The calendar pages continued to flip, November turning into December, and the usual festive hum in our house was conspicuously absent. Normally, by now, the faint scent of pine would permeate the air. A box of ornaments would be strategically placed in the living room, ready for our annual decorating ritual. But this year, the boxes remained in the attic undisturbed. I found myself walking through the house, a ghost in my own unchristmassy home. The mantelpiece, usually overflowing with garlands and twinkling lights, was starkly bare. The window where our grand tree always stood looked out onto the street, empty and unadorned. It felt wrong, profoundly wrong, like a missing limb. My children, usually buzzing with excitement for the upcoming decorating day, started to notice. My daughter, Lily, 15, found me one afternoon staring blankly at the empty fireplace. Mom, aren't we going to put up the decorations this year? Her voice was laced with a hint of concern. I turned, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Oh, honey, remember Grandma Carol is hosting this year? We won't need all of our decorations. They'll have their own. Lily frowned, her brow furrowing. But it's not the same. Our ornaments are here. Our tree is here. My son, Ethan, 17, chimed in. Yeah, Mom. It's just weird. Christmas is always at our house. Their words were a balm and a sting. A balm because they understood, even if Mark didn't. A sting because their disappointment mirrored my own, amplified. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, an idea began to form. It started as a tiny spark of defiance, growing into a steady flame. If Carol wanted to host Christmas, then she could host Christmas. All of it. Every single, sparkling, festive piece of it. I would not lift a finger. I would not contribute a single ornament, a single string of lights, a single festive sprig of holly. If my efforts were so easily dismissed, then I would simply stop. The next morning, I went up to the attic. I pulled down every single Christmas bin. Mark, bless his oblivious heart, saw me dragging them down the stairs and said, "Oh, good, you're finally getting into the spirit." I just smiled enigmatically. He had no idea. I didn't open the bins and pull out decorations. Instead, I methodically, carefully, began to box up every single decoration. The sentimental ornaments, each one a memory. The lights, the garlands, the wreaths, the stockings, everything. I wrapped them in tissue paper, placed them gently into new, unmarked cardboard boxes. I went through the entire house, even the little festive touches I usually kept out year-round, like the tiny ceramic reindeer on the bookshelf or the holiday-themed coasters. Into the boxes they went. It was a quiet, almost meditative act. Each item I packed represented not just a decoration, but a piece of my heart, a fragment of my tradition. And as I packed them away, I felt a strange sense of liberation. This wasn't anger, it was something deeper. It was about reclaiming my own peace, my own dignity. If they didn't value what I brought to the table, then I would simply remove it. Not in a fit of rage, but with a quiet, determined resolve. Mark eventually noticed. "What are you doing with all these boxes, Audrey?" he asked one evening, walking into the living room, which was now filled with neatly stacked, anonymous cardboard. "Oh," I said, looking up from carefully placing a Santa figurine into a box. "I'm just getting things ready. Since we're not hosting, I figured it was a good time to organize everything properly. We wouldn't want to bring all of this to Carol's, would we? They have their own things." He paused, a hint of confusion on his face. "But aren't we taking anything? Like our stockings, or?" I shook my head, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. "No, dear. We're just guests this year. We'll show up, enjoy Carol's hospitality, and let them handle everything." His brow furrowed, but he didn't press. He still didn't understand the depth of my quiet rebellion. He simply saw a woman efficiently organizing her belongings. He didn't see the woman rebuilding herself. The quiet click of tape sealing a box became the soundtrack to my carefully orchestrated detachment. Each closed flap felt like a small act of self-preservation, a boundary drawn in the shifting sands of family expectations. As the last ornament was nestled away, a strange sense of calm settled over me, a fragile truce between the sting of abandonment and the quiet strength of my newfound resolve. The drive to Carol and Richard's house on Christmas Eve was eerily silent. The usual festive carols were absent from the radio, replaced by a local news station. Mark kept glancing at me, a worried frown on his face. He'd tried to coax me into bringing at least something, a small festive offering, but I had remained steadfast. "No, Mark," I'd said, my voice gentle but firm. "We are guests. We will arrive as guests with our gifts and nothing more." Our children, usually bursting with energy, seemed subdued. They'd seen the barrenness of our own home, felt the shift in my usually effervescent holiday spirit. They didn't complain, but their silence spoke volumes. It was clear they understood, in their own way, that something fundamental had changed. When we pulled into Carol and Richard's driveway, their house was predictably a blaze of glory. Lights twinkled from every bush, garlands draped over every railing. A giant inflatable Santa presided over the front lawn, waving cheerily. It was, in a word, excessive. It was their Christmas, loud and proud, in stark contrast to the quiet emptiness of ours. Carol met us at the door, her smile wide and welcoming, almost blinding. "Audrey, Mark. Children. So glad you're here. Come in, come in." As we stepped inside, the familiar scent of pine, spices, and something vaguely like potpourri assaulted my senses. Their living room was a riot of color and sparkle. Every surface was covered, figurines, ceramic villages, endless strings of lights woven through fake greenery. Their tree, an artificial behemoth, groaned under the weight of hundreds of ornaments, a chaotic mix of store-bought baubles and slightly dated family photos. It was a lot. And it wasn't my Christmas. It was hers. I felt a strange detachment, almost like I was observing a scene from a movie. Carol, however, quickly noticed what we hadn't brought. Her eyes darted around, then settled on our empty hands. "Audrey, dear, where are your beautiful stockings? And those lovely ornaments you always make for the tree?" I smiled, a polite, almost serene smile. "Oh, Carol, we left all of our decorations at home. We didn't want to clutter up your lovely display. Besides," I added, a tiny edge to my voice that only I could hear, "we figured you had everything covered." Her smile faltered, just for a second. A flicker of something. Surprise? Annoyance? crossed her face before she quickly recovered. "Oh, well, of course. More than enough for everyone," she chirped, perhaps a little too loudly. The rest of the evening proceeded with an almost forced cheer. Carol kept trying to draw me into conversations about decorating, about specific ornaments, about holiday recipes. Each time, I deflected gently, reminding her that I was just enjoying the break, and so glad someone else was handling everything. Mark, sensing the subtle tension, tried to lighten the mood, making jokes, trying to engage the kids. But even he seemed a little off-kilter. The children, usually so boisterous, were quieter than usual. They played with their cousins, but their usual spark wasn't there. It was Christmas Eve, and something essential was missing. It wasn't the decorations, not really. It was the heart, the unique rhythm of our family's celebration. And as I looked around Carol's overly decorated, yet strangely impersonal, home, I realized the quiet rebellion had truly begun. The dazzling spectacle of their holiday decor, meant to evoke cheer, instead cast a harsh, almost clinical light on the stark differences between our approaches. It was a visual metaphor for the chasm that had opened, revealing not just a shift in hosting duties, but a fundamental misalignment of priorities and unspoken expectations. The air hummed with an artificial brightness, a stark contrast to the quiet, genuine warmth I yearned for. Christmas Day arrived, and with it, a strange sense of anticipation, not for gifts or festive cheer, but for the inevitable unraveling of unspoken expectations. Breakfast was a chaotic affair, with too many people in a too small kitchen. Carol, despite her insistence on hosting, seemed flustered, barking orders at Richard and constantly checking on the roasting turkey. The usual calm, organized flow of Christmas morning at my house was replaced by a palpable tension. After breakfast, it was time for gifts. Carol and Richard had insisted on a massive gift exchange, with each family member buying something for everyone else. The sheer volume of presents was overwhelming, a mountain of brightly wrapped boxes that took up half the living room. As the unwrapping began, I noticed a subtle shift in the children. My kids, usually so excited, seemed to be going through the motions. They politely thanked their grandparents and aunts and uncles for their gifts, but the genuine delight, the squeals of joy, were muted. They missed their own stockings, their own familiar traditions. I caught Lily's eye across the room, and she gave me a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. She was missing it too. Ethan, usually glued to his new video games, kept looking at his watch. It was a silent testament to the fact that something was off. Later in the afternoon, after a heavy, overcooked turkey dinner, Carol finally brought it up. We were all sitting around, feeling sluggish and overfed. "So, Audrey," she began, a forced brightness in her voice, "I must admit, I was a little surprised you didn't bring any of your Christmas things. You always have such lovely decorations." I took a sip of my wine, carefully choosing my words. "Carol," I said, my voice calm and even, "I've been hosting Christmas for 20 years. Every single ornament, every single light, every single tradition has been about creating that magic in our home. When you decided to host, I understood that you wanted to create your own Christmas here. And that's wonderful. But I didn't see the need to bring my things and impose them on your vision." There was a beat of silence. Mark shifted uncomfortably beside me. Richard cleared his throat. Carol's smile tightened, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Impose? Audrey, dear, that's a bit dramatic. We just thought you'd want to share your traditions." "My traditions," I repeated softly, "are intrinsically linked to my home. They are part of the spirit we create there. It's not just about putting up a tree, Carol. It's about the feeling, the atmosphere, the culmination of years of love and effort." I continued, my voice gaining a quiet strength. "And frankly, when you made the decision to host, without any discussion, it felt dismissive. As if all those years of my dedication meant nothing. As if it could be replaced with a casual announcement." The words hung in the air, raw and honest. Carol's face flushed. Richard finally spoke, his voice a little gruff. "Now, Audrey, that's not fair. Carol just wanted to give you a break. A break from joy." I countered, looking directly at Mark, who finally seemed to be grasping the depth of my feelings. "A break from something I pour my heart into? You don't take a break from something you love." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The children, sensing the shift, had grown completely silent. It wasn't an angry outburst, it was a quiet, almost mournful statement of truth. And for the first time, I felt like I was finally being heard, even if it was uncomfortable for everyone involved. The silence that followed my words was not one of defeat, but of profound understanding. It was a silence that allowed the raw edges of truth to settle, revealing the unspoken resentments that had simmered beneath the surface of forced smiles and polite pleasantries. In that heavy stillness, the true weight of my quiet rebellion began to resonate, not just with my in-laws, but with my husband, a stark realization dawning in his eyes. The rest of Christmas Day was a blur of forced cheer. The air in Carol and Richard's house felt heavy, thick with unspoken words. My outburst hadn't been a loud, dramatic scene, but its quiet intensity had clearly resonated. Carol was quieter, less effusive. Richard seemed to avoid eye contact. Even Mark was subdued, his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a thoughtful silence. On the drive home, the car was still quiet, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. Not the tense, uncomfortable silence of before, but a reflective one. Finally, Mark broke it. "Audrey," he began, his voice soft. I'm sorry. I really didn't realize how much this meant to you. I just thought it was about who was doing the cooking." I sighed a long, weary sigh. "It's never been just about the cooking, Mark. It's about building something, creating something special for our family. It's about passing on a legacy." He reached over and took my hand, squeezing it gently. "I know that now. I really do. Seeing your face today, seeing the kids, it wasn't the same, was it?" "No," I said. "It wasn't." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "So, what now? Do we go back to doing Christmas here next year?" I leaned my head against the cool window, watching the streetlights blur past. "I don't know, Mark. What I do know is that I can't go back to pretending that my efforts don't matter. I can't go back to feeling invisible." The conversation continued over the next few days. Mark, to his credit, truly seemed to understand now. He listened, he asked questions, and he acknowledged my hurt. He even suggested we talk to Carol and Richard together. I told him I needed more time, but appreciated the thought. The quiet act of boxing up my decorations had been more than just a symbolic gesture. It had been an act of self-preservation. It forced me to confront how much I had allowed my self-worth to be tied to this one aspect of my life. It made me realize that while I loved creating Christmas magic, I also needed to be seen and valued for who I was, not just for what I did. The kids, surprisingly, were a huge source of support. Lily, wise beyond her years, came to me one afternoon. "Mom," she said, "it's okay. We know you tried. And it was still boring at Grandma's. Our Christmas is always the best." Ethan, ever practical, added, "Yeah, their tree was all fake anyway. Ours is way better." Their words, simple as they were a powerful affirmation. It wasn't about the location or the specific decorations. It was about the intention, the love, the unique spirit we created together as a family. And that, I realized, was something no one could take away from me, no matter where Christmas was held. The quiet rebellion had ignited a necessary conversation, a painful but ultimately liberating revelation. The echoes of our strained Christmas faded, replaced by the quiet hum of reflection, a necessary pause for introspection. This wasn't merely a return to normalcy, but a cautious step onto unfamiliar ground, where the boundaries of tradition were being redrawn, and the true meaning of family celebration was being reevaluated through the lens of newfound understanding. So, here we are 6 months later. Christmas is still a distant thought on the horizon, but the reverberations of last year's quiet rebellion are still being felt. Carol and Richard, after some initial awkwardness, have been different. Not hostile, but certainly more aware. They haven't mentioned Christmas plans for this year, and I haven't pushed them. The ball, for now, is in their court. Mark and I, on the other hand, are stronger for it. Our marriage endured the unspoken tensions and the difficult conversations, and in doing so, we forged a deeper understanding. He sees me now, truly sees the effort and love I pour into our family and our traditions. He understands that while I might have been willing to give up the hosting of Christmas, I would never give up the spirit of it. The main lesson I learned through all of this is a profound one. Your value is not defined by your output, especially when that output is taken for granted. It's about self-respect, about setting boundaries, and about recognizing when you're being taken for granted. Sometimes the quietest actions speak the loudest. By boxing up every single decoration, I wasn't just being petty. I was asserting my worth, reclaiming my peace, and forcing others to acknowledge the void that was created by my absence. To anyone out there who feels unseen, unappreciated, or that their efforts are being dismissed, I urge you to consider your own quiet rebellion. What are you holding on to that is draining you? What are you pouring your heart into that is not being reciprocated or even acknowledged? Maybe it's not Christmas decorations, but perhaps it's something equally significant to you. Don't be afraid to pull back, to create space, to let others feel the weight of their own expectations. The change might be uncomfortable, but the self-respect you gain is worth every uneasy silence. As for me, the Christmas bins are still in the attic, carefully labeled and undisturbed. And for the first time in a very long time, I feel a sense of calm and anticipation, not just for the holiday season, but for whatever new traditions or renewed old ones may emerge from the quiet strength I found in setting my own terms. The magic of Christmas, I now know, truly comes from within, and no one can box that up but me.